As the official healthcare provider of Minnesota United, Allina Health is focused on keeping our loons in top condition. And with expertise in orthopedics, sports medicine, heart care, and more, Allina has the team to keep your family in the game too. The experts at Allina Health take the time to get to know you as a whole person, helping you achieve wellness for your mind, body, and spirit. It's an altogether better kind of healthcare. Learn more at allinahealth.org. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Sound of the Loons presented by Allina Health. And this time we get to be joined by a fellow Apple MLS broadcaster. We don't get to do broadcasters very often anymore. It's normally we're kind of honed in on what's going on with Minnesota United. So appreciate you taking the time. This is Frederic Lord, who is with Montreal, but we know you're all things MLS, all things soccer. I don't even want to just pigeonhole you into one thing. So I appreciate you taking the time today.
Thanks for having me. First time caller, long time fan, especially of your technique and everything. And this year you're paired with the most beloved man in MLS, probably Kevin Egan. Everyone's friend. What a mensch. What a mensch.
Yeah, exactly. Is it Kevin Egan, Kevin Patrick? We're trying to keep it straight. He's got these alter egos between calling MLS games with me and doing the 360, the studio show, and then also his WWE foray that he, turns into some other person on Monday night. So yeah, it's been a blast. It's a different journey for sure. So how has the journey been for you? Because you've been broadcasting for a long time. And we're both, I don't know how old you are, but I'm old. So, when you've been around this long and you have all these different iterations of what your career and your path takes, how did you get into it? Why soccer? Why Montreal? How was that path for you?
Do you want a full story? I'm 42, so I'm still, I think 42 is the new 28. I think.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. I don't know. I was a sports fan forever, and I come from a background of journalists, and my grandfather was a journalist. He owned newspaper. I still have his newspaper front page in my office also. So I've always been into journalism, and especially sports journalism. And at one point I don't know, I was a big soccer fan also. And I worked at the CBC, or Radio-Canada, which is the country main network here. And I decided to just get on the beat of the Montreal Impact. I wasn't even paid for it. But I was going in my free time to practices, and I know that the union didn't really like it, but I was still producing stuff out of it. And then there was a new network that came along in Montreal. It's called the TVA Sports, which is part of the biggest mediatic group in Canada, in Quebec, actually, I would say. And they just hired me out of the blue. It was my big break, and I learned on air. I was I'm so grateful I could have learned on air. And I think I'm telling you that because it's telling about my relationship with our audience here. I think they grew with me. They come to love the club a little bit more. We went through all those phases with Divayo, Drogba, Piatti, and we developed a bond also that's super interesting, and I think precious at the moment. Well, yeah, that's my in short, my story.
I love that, though, because I think, and it's so different, the paths these days with all these broadcast journalism schools and these different opportunities for, students and kids and people to have these internships and get real-time experience. And you have all these student networks at all these universities, which never existed when I was around. So it was the same thing. You're just pounding the pavement and knocking on doors and hey, where can I get my foot in the door, whether I get paid or not? But it's something that you're passionate about. And when you can turn something that you're passionate about into an actual career, and then on top of it, you get paid at the end of the day, it's it doesn't get much better than that. It's
really a sinuous path for me, because I was in theater in my early 20s. I was in community radio, also at a weird sports show, and somebody from the CBC heard that weird sports show. It was called À bout de souffle from the Jean-Luc Godard movie. So it was like kind of a blend of like, and they liked it, and they hired me for Sirius on their Sirius radio, satellite radio. I wasn't like nobody would listen to it except for 2 or 3 truckers that would like commute from like all across the United States and call in for to talk to me, and would talk and chat forever with those guys. That was an amazing time actually, and great learning experiences.
I was just going to say that I think sometimes too, when you start in radio, it gives you a very different perspective than when you just jump straight into TV. And, you know, you have to fill some of those voids when people can't see what's happening, and you're in the conversational aspect of it. And, you know, just learning different things like inflection and tone and the back and forth, and being just sort of real rather than when it's on TV and it can feel a little more scripted when you're doing pre and post and half and everything else. So, you know. I'm
going to send you flowers for that, but that's what from you, like rhythm and your technique with your voice is amazing. That's
well, thank
that's
you.
something that I like from your broadcast.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think it is, you know, it's just one of those things you try to, and nobody's ever going to like everything you do. Right. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. We all see it now on social media and Twitter, you know, people have their preferences, but I want to talk a little bit about that foray into soccer, into Montreal. And at the time it was the Impact. And you just named some insane players that have gone through that city and been a part of the soccer history there. You've been there broadcasting, you said, for 12 years, correct? As a commentator, as a broadcaster.
15 years with the Impact, all in all.
Yeah. So what's the journey been like? What has that iteration, how has the club evolved? And then, you know, every club goes through some ups and downs. Every club has its challenges, whether it's ownership and stadium and fan bases and other teams coming in and the expansion of the league. But you got to see all of it firsthand. So what's that been like from your seat?
I don't know. That's super interesting. It's been a real roller coaster because we had like some great moments, and it's part of the identity of the club. It's a club that like really passionate, and it's another word for impatient also. But like in sports, when you hear that's one thing I say on my podcast. When you're passionate, it's a code word for I don't know, being for rage or impatience. So it's been they've dreamed big with the Drogba thing, with the Divayo. They've dreamed big with the stadium at first, and Mr. Saputo, the Saputo family was I've been front and center for that city and for that club for the last 30 years. And during MLS, there have been some up and down. Jesse Marsh was here. It was his first gig in MLS. Let's not forget that. And and there was the pandemic. There was a rebrand also that really infuriated the base here, and we're on the other side of that pandemic. And like now is Gabriel Gervais, who's the new president. He's the pilot in that boat at the moment, and I think he's kind of righting up the ship, meaning that the team is re-embracing his Montreal roots. They find with Olivier Renard, a new technical director, that can like have a real project, taking potential out of the league, especially, and just letting him bloom on the field. We saw that with Mihailovic. We saw that with Johnston, even Kamal Miller, who's in Miami now. They're trying to do that this year with Duke and Campbell. So that's where we're at. And I think the public has responded great so far, because for the last few games it's been sold out in the stadium. I think there's a good ambience, and I think the club is trying to embrace a little bit more what makes it different from the league. I think it's a real asset for the League Montreal, because there's no market like this one, even in Toronto and Vancouver, which are the two other Canadian markets. It's a francophone market here, the only one in MLS. It's really different. American players, when they come here, they're a bit like, I don't know, they feel like they have one foot in Europe, one foot in America also. That's something that's, I think it's a strength of the club. And at the moment with Gabriel Gervais, like I said, they're starting to embrace it. And that's, as a Montrealer myself, that's kind of fun at the moment.
Yeah, that's what you want. You want people to embrace the city, whether it's people that are coming in as, you know, from whether they're Americans coming and playing in Montreal, or whether it's, you know, players that are international and coming into that city. It does have a real international vibe to it. It's unlike pretty much any other city in North America, to be honest, that has an MLS team, I should say. And, you know, and I do think too, like what was the vibe around the changes that happened in the offseason, because Montreal's coming off, you know, a fabulous 2022.
Yeah.
You know, Wilfred Nancy doesn't stick around. A bunch of players are sold. Didn't know if they brought the players in that they needed to fill those voids, but everybody, it's this transfer game, right? You're trying to get money for quality, but you still got to replace the quality that you're selling off. And so what was the vibe? And now you have Hernan Lozada, who's sort of starting to maybe find his groove a little bit. What's the overall thought?
He is at the moment. You might have to ask this question to many people, and you have probably different answers. I would answer it in two parts. The players leaving, Mihailovic and Johnston, like I said, and Kone. People were at peace with that and super happy, because I told you about Olivier Renard's project. Yeah. People understand that Montreal is going to be a stepping stone, or it's going to be a club that like will bring people up, players up, and then let them go and let them have like a bigger careers elsewhere. It's kind of the appeal of Montreal at the moment for certain players. Bryce Duke probably came to Montreal because he saw what we did with those players and what Montreal did with those players, and as it served as a stepping stone for Europe. The big one was Wilfred Nancy. It was blurry. I still think around the MLS, nobody has a firm grasp of what happened, but it was the best season in the history of the club in MLS. And you can debate also in his 30 years history. It was a great season. Wilfred Nancy was from Montreal, from the academy, from Rémi Garde, Wilmer Cabrera, Mauro Biello, and Thierry Henrys, and he paid his due. And there was one game, this infamous game last year against Kansas City. There was an argument between Mr. Saputo and Wilfred Nancy. A line was crossed, and Nancy vowed to never work again for that club, actually. And so, and people were like, when I said passionate, people in Montreal are like, once again, that passion or that rage is like we're shooting ourselves in our own foot. Yes. And that was the feeling at the start of the season. And when Lozada came in, he was like the new dad coming in, and everybody was like, hey, he's not my dad. Actually, you'll never be my dad. Yeah. And it took a few games for even some of the players, last year's players especially, to really embrace the new project and the new what Lozada was saying. And we hit rock bottom April 1st and April 8th. Vancouver and New England. I don't know if you know the score, 5-0 and 4-0. I was on those games making the calls and was like, that season is going to be ugly, because they got piled, they got like killed on the pitch, and there was like no ideas, nothing. And after those two games, all the players were like, we now understand that we're not the team from last year. We're that team with 11 new players. 11, that's not nothing. 18 players under 24. It's a pretty young team, Montreal. So they kind of embrace Lozada's message from that point on, and you see the difference at the moment, and you see the connection between the players and the coach. You see the connection even more at the moment because they're winning, obviously, but between the coach and the fans, they've the last 2 or 3 games, you see Lozada going to the fans embracing Lozada. And he's a nice guy, actually. But the first month or so in the season, I was worried that everything would like sink at the bottom of the ocean, and we will never we would have to ride that 2023 season off.
Well, that is the challenge. I mean, he stepped into a difficult situation when you come off of 2022, where it's the best possibly in the club's history, and the way that they parted ways. And as we've all seen with Wilfred Nancy, like, he's a man that believes firmly in what he believes, and whether that's his style of play or his philosophy or whatever was said, that he was sticking to his guns in that moment. And we've seen it now, even when Columbus, when he's walked in and trying to do what he's doing there. So he was a very, I think, going back to that passionate or that rage or whatever it falls on ownership side. Sometimes it falls on coaching sides and managerial, and sometimes it's players. But I do think probably the best thing that could happen was the players just embracing and understanding we are not who we were last year. And the coach is not the same philosophy. So the quicker we come to that conclusion and we can move on and start embracing what Lozada is trying to do, then hopefully this, because otherwise it was going to be a real long 2023.
Exactly.
And it seems like, yes, coming off not a great performance against the Philadelphia Union, but nobody, a lot of teams don't beat the Philadelphia Union. So when you look at
they
this
rotated though against the Union,
you have to,
like it was like the B team.
Yes. Yeah, and you have to because of the nature of the schedule right now. Yeah. I mean, everybody with you guys had Canadian Championship, and then you've got these, you've got Concacaf Nations League, all these things coming up, Leagues Cup, like everything that's being thrown in here, and then Gold Cup. There's no slowing down for this season, whether it's between international call-ups or whether it's just within MLS and what everyone is dealing with. So the rotation of the squad and then finding your depth is going to be the next key piece on, putting in and trusting some of those players to be able to step in those moments and fill in without missing a beat. So when you look ahead and you talk about this matchup this coming weekend, what do you see? What does that look like from your vantage point? And now that you just told me for Apple even that you're going to be kind of with Montreal, which is like a benefit in the sense that you can really have the inside scoop on what is going on with this club. Not that you didn't already, but rather than like, every week, two different teams trying to make sure that you're doing it justice on the broadcast and diving into everything. What do you see from the matchup coming up this weekend?
It's all depends on Canadian Championship also, because Losada, and that's something that people here in Montreal really loved about Losada.
A lot of pride.
Really insisted on like getting a cup and getting something. In that stadium. So it will depend. Will they come as Canadian champion on Saturday, or will they be a little bit deflated by a defeat to Vancouver? So that's that the game on Wednesday will tell us a lot about the game on Saturday. That's what I think. He rotated also a lot. So I don't know. You're talking about load management.
Yes.
There's been a lot of injuries. It's been true for a lot of teams at the moment, but I think Montreal, Kyoto, with that, like it's the least they spent like $10 million. It's the team that spent the least on players in MLS this year, Montreal, and they still have a great project and they still want to find potential in those players. But at one point in sports, when you don't spend, you come short really fast. And without Kyoto, without Piet, without Mason Toy at the moment also, you can tell that there's a shortage of players and resources, especially up front, because it's one of the least, they don't shoot that much, they don't score that much, Montreal, and they have to grind those victories at the moment. So I don't know. It's that's the two things that I foresee at the moment. Are they going to come on Saturday as a Canadian champion and like maybe surf on that wave, on that feeling, or and who will be available also at that point? Who's like in top shape to get ready? Because there's some players like Lassiter and Herrera on both sides of the pitch there. You need them at the moment to get a win in MLS.
Well, and you just said it. I mean, they play a game on Wednesday in the Canadian Championship. Minnesota United does not have the midweek game as they were bounced in U.S. Open Cup a week or so ago at Houston. But the same thing, I mean, this is the stage in MLS where the Canadian Championship and U.S. Open Cup, everybody's putting everybody wants to win some piece of silverware. And those trophies are important. They have a history. There's a long line of lineage of, 100 plus years with U.S. Open Cup, the Lamar Hunt. So same thing with Canadian Championship. There's a lot of pride in that and having that confidence. So it could go one of two ways for Montreal based on the Vancouver game. And you just said it. It could be riding high from a win, or then the next thing is just the depth and the health of the players. You're not just talking like, are you 100% 90-minute match fit? You're like, can you hobble out there and take up a space and give us 60? It's kind of at that stage with the depth.
There's some really important players that have given like lots of money that have given lots of time to that team. Mathieu Choignard in midfield, Victor Wanyama in midfield. Also, I think they played like pretty much all the minutes, like 1,000 minutes in a month. That's insane. Goodness. Same for Rudy Camacho, who received Christian Benteke in the chest 2 or 3 nights ago, and he had trouble sleeping. Last time I was telling him, he was like, I'm still bruised here. He got like Benteke's knee right in the middle of the stomach, so he had like trouble and couldn't play. So is he going to play on Wednesday? And he's been instrumental in the middle of that back three also, Camacho. So yeah, it's all about health and maybe mentality for Saturday.
Well, and I think that's a great point too, because it's always finding, at least I've noticed with MLS rosters, is everybody wants this international flair, go out and get the big money players. But at the same time, if you're spending money that's not well spent and they don't fit into the system and they're not great in this league, it's a different animal, the travel, the climate change. I don't care where you played before. And then on top of it, they have to fit into the system and the style. So you have to have this like really delicate balance of quality veteran MLS guys that get it and understand, and oftentimes they're North American or American players, and then the combination of some of the flair of the South American influx and the European and even the South African players that we're seeing sort of come into this league and trying to find that balance.
Yeah, you can see that, and it's always a weird time when like MLS players release their salary list. But you do the work all the time, or you look at that, and I know that the players look at it also. In Montreal, you have a guy like Ahmed Hamzi who like earns 3 times the salary of Mathieu Choignard, but like doesn't play half of the minutes that he plays it. And that's really a really important thing. And I think that Olivier Renard and Vassili Kremanzidis, which is his assistant, really understood that and like made sure that they're going to get like some players potential within the league. And that's one thing that Montreal has done really well, like identifying players that are maybe not playing that much in other clubs and just getting those players and being the stepping stone for them.
Speaking back, I just want to ask you another quick question about the depth. What do you see about the youth movement there? There's so much made now about MLS Next Pro and the academies and the twos and trying to put all this emphasis on growing the league within and the young players. And, it used to be just about homegrowns, but it's kind of, divulged into this academy thing. What do you see about that? Because some of that depth come from those places, or is Montreal not quite at that level yet?
It's something that I'm really worried about, actually, because I was really a big fan of the academy pre-pandemic, and they fired the head of the academy, and there was like during the pandemic there was like a kind of an in-between. Fast forward to 2023, Montreal is the only team without MLS Next Pro team, so that's a problem, I think, for this. I know that Olivier Renard has been like defending this system, but it's something that like will hurt them in a not so long future, actually. Because we have talent, we have the coaches, but you have to have the stepping stone. You want to make sure also that the player stays within the academy at 17, 18, 19. And you see some players trying to leave, trying to have some tryouts elsewhere. Maybe there's a CPL also, so you're losing some players, and you don't have also the late bloomers that can help your roster, like Joel Waterman, which is not a product from the academy, but he was like poached from the CPL at 22, 23.
Absolutely.
Same thing for Mathieu Choignard, who's coming into his own at 24. You have to blossom like that, you have to have minutes. And those 19-year-old Rida Zouir is an example at the moment. He wasn't playing that much the last 2 years. They loaned him to San Antonio. I think it's good for him, but I don't think it's sustainable for that academy to produce like they wanted to produce and don't have a MLS Next Pro team at the moment. So it's a bit worrisome. I know also that the budget is really different from if you say Toronto. We always look at what Toronto does. They have
but they're like what, 13th in the East, I mean, that goes back to the point of it doesn't always pay to pay, you got to get the right guys.
Exactly, but as a team who wants to give space to young players and who wants to embrace the city, also, I think they should do a little bit more with the academy. So, but they're still loaning players to the CPL. For now, it's working. Jonathan Sirois, who's now the goalkeeper, was the last 2 seasons in CPL. So to be fair, it can work. Also, there's ways it can work, and if Olivier Renard was here, he would probably chastise me for being so worried about that academy. But it's something that, and it doesn't look good on your club. I think as a partner in MLS to be the only team without an MLS Next Pro team.
Yeah.
So but there's
a balance, right? Yes,
Yeah.
there's a balance. And, I mean, when I was working the MLS Cup final last year, and you talk about two different teams, the way the Philadelphia Union builds their team and the way LAFC builds their team. And so there is not one path to success.
No,
yes.
exactly.
Is it nice to build within and produce your own players? And then whether they play for you for a little bit and then you sell them off and you can profit from that. And then you just know that you have this stream of depth kind of coming in and quality, and they're in your system and they understand the expectations. Like, yes, that can be incredibly helpful, but there's not one way to get there at the end of the day. And I think there's, again, going back to the pride of the city and the soccer culture in Montreal and what it has been there. There's pride in kids that, like, there's a thing about wearing the crest, about wearing the badge, and you hear it in these other cities and these other places that, if they grew up going to a Chicago Fire game and now they're wearing a Chicago Fire crest, there's something to be said for that. And there's like a real sense of pride in it. So if maybe Montreal can find that balance and get to that point, then I think there's a different evolution in the fan base and the passion in the supporters and wanting to have their family. I mean, you got 50 people at a game, if you're coming through a homegrown, You're
selling tickets also to
right, exactly. You got your 50 family members for one kid that's showing up to watch that game because that's what they grew up with. So
yeah. But I know that like with Ismael Kone, some of the clubs here that he played for are really happy, and they really he was playing for Saint Laurent. They're really putting that in the forefront. He's now in the Premier League. Like, look, that's the guy from. And we're part of that soccer world, We're not like second-class citizen. We're full citizen of that soccer, especially with Canada, the World Cup also, and everything. Yes, you can see the ball is rolling.
Yeah, so we got the women coming up this summer.
Exactly.
I mean, the ball is rolling, and it's fully, I think, it's fully embraced. And seeing the men at the World Cup last summer was something to behold. I know it didn't end the way they wanted, but the way they got there was pretty phenomenal, finishing at the top of Concacaf, and that was fun to see. So, well, I appreciate you taking the time. I'm looking forward to Saturday's game. We'll see how the Canadian Championship turns out, what Montreal team shows up. I know it's always a little tricky when you get West East. These guys don't see each other that often. But it's also MLS, so anybody can beat anybody on any given night, and it's a total crapshoot. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the beauty of the league, right?
That's the beauty of the league, and everybody can beat everyone on every night. That's a strength of that MLS, I think.
Right, exactly. That manufactured parody that they've done so well, but it makes people tune in. That's why we want to watch, and I appreciate you taking the time today. And I'm going to go from one Canadian to the next. I got Dayne St. Clair next. So the goalkeeper for Minnesota United is going to be hopping on here, and we're going to get his take on the upcoming weekend game, chat a little Canadian soccer as well. And I look forward to your call on Saturday, and we'll be tuning in tonight for the Canadian Championship as well. It is Wednesday today, isn't it?
It is.
Okay.
It's tonight.
Okay. Yeah. Just making sure it's all a blur what day of the week it is. So I look forward to Montreal's result tonight, and we'll see you on the call on Saturday as well.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. From graduation parties to corporate luncheons, we all have special occasions that could use a special host location. Regardless of the event, Allianz Field is the perfect spot for you, with a variety of unique spaces to choose from, including the roof deck, stadium club, owner's suite, and more. Minnesota United's home ground has a space to fit any kind of gathering. Give your event the professional treatment it deserves. Learn more and book your spot at Allianz Field today by visiting MNUFC.com/private events. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to segment number 2 of Sound of the Loons. We go from one Canadian, Montreal's commentator, Frederic Lord, to another Canadian in Dayne St. Clair, goalkeeper extraordinaire for Minnesota United, Canadian men's national team. But, you and I were just talking before we started recording. I know we're going to deep dive into Montreal and the season. You can break it all down, the clean sheets and everything else. But first and foremost, we're just going to give the listeners and the viewers what they want. You've got a new grill. You got to tell me what kind of grill and what is your go-to. Are you like a fish, steak, chicken, kebab guy? What do we got going on there?
So I got a Traeger. So
okay.
Kind of new to me with the pellet grill. So I've kind of been playing around with it a little bit still. I just bought some ribs the other day, so hoping to make those either today or tomorrow. But yeah, I think kind of just it's a new setup for me, so just kind of playing around with things, various different. I mean, it's the opportunities are endless. You can make pizza on it, so I definitely want to try to do that as well. Yeah, for sure.
I feel like that'd be real tough to screw up. I could be wrong, but like the Traeger too, is that like smoker and a grill, and then like set it and forget it, but you got to have patience because sometimes it's going to take you like 8 hours or
yeah. So you can kind of set it as a grill if you want to. You can set it low for a smoker. It goes all the way up to 500. So you can play your roles with that. I did a reverse here on a steak the other day that turned out pretty nice. But yeah, still kind of just playing around with it and talking to my other friends that have some boxy got one too. So we've kind of been talking and trying to attempting different things and see what works and whatnot.
Sharing some recipes. Well, it's funny too, because I feel like with all the different cultures too, like you might have some great input, you know, I mean, even Zarek, right? Just spent time in Houston. Maybe he's got some thoughts on like what they did down in Houston with the barbecue. And then you've got South Americans, they might have a different flair on what works and what doesn't. And then I don't know if you want to ask guys like Robin or anything. I don't know what they grill in Finland, but you know, you might just want, or what New Zealand, I guess, what was the theme there from boxing?
Yeah, he said he did the reverse here of the steak, which kind of gave me the idea to try it.
Nice. But
yeah, I feel like his wife's like a nutritionist or has a
that's true.
Right. So he's gotta have some kind of good food over there for sure.
Well, yeah, but you got to have some flavor on that bad boy. You know, I mean, it's probably a little high in sodium for Libby. She's incredibly healthy. She's a very healthful person. And so I appreciate what she brings to the table. I'm sure that probably helps keep Boxy in check a little bit. So let's talk about you. What's your summer look like? I know we've got Minnesota's schedule. We know what that looks like. We know where you guys are sitting in the table. You know, you got a game coming up Saturday against Montreal, a team that you don't see very often. Eastern Conference, going across the border back to sort of your roots in Canada. I mean, Canada's a big country, so we can't just lump it all in one. But what's the summer look like for you coming up? You got a lot going on this summer with international duty as well.
Yeah, they just released the roster today. We got a Nations League, so after that Montreal game, be heading over to Vegas for that those 2 games there, and hopefully to be lifting a trophy at the end of it. And then a few days later, Gold Cup starts up. So looking forward to be a part of that squad as well. And then come back to Minnesota, and we got Leagues Cup. So a lot of tournaments this summer for sure, and a lot of football to be played for sure. But it's the nice weather in Minnesota, and this is the time you want to be outside and be playing too.
Thank goodness. My gosh, I don't even care if it's 90 degrees and humid out. After what we just suffered through, I was like, I'm 100% fine with going out and sweating every day. I don't know how you guys feel at training, but that's kind of how I feel walking out the door. I'm like, after what we just went through, like, give me all the heat and humidity. I don't even care.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's like, oh, you're from Toronto. Like, you like the cold. And I'm like, I know how to deal with the cold. That doesn't mean I like it. I like to say my dad's from the Caribbean. I have Caribbean blood. I don't like the cold. I like when it's hot. I'm like, I'll take 90 degrees versus 20 any day of the week.
Exactly. I was just going to say, yes, you're from Toronto, you're from Canada, but like you have your you have your Caribbean roots. Excuse me. I don't want to say Jamaican. You have your Caribbean roots. So like at the end of the day, I mean, I grew up my whole life in Minnesota. It doesn't mean I like cold weather. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean just because you got stuck there because your parents chose to go there doesn't mean that you have to like it. So
exactly.
I'll take
just know how to deal with it.
Exactly. I mean, you got people like Angie Blaker who like thrives in it and loves it. And I'm like, girl, you got to get out, in the wintertime here, but she loves it. So talk to me about the season. I mean, we let's talk a little bit about the evolution, and because we all know the adversity you guys faced in the beginning, and Emmanuel Reynoso not coming back. He's back in. He played. I did the last game you guys had on Saturday. He stepped on the field. We all know his qualities on the field. But did you feel like anyways that this group, it wasn't about who wasn't there. It was about who was there. And then you guys got off to that fantastic stretch, hit a little bit of a lull after the Chicago loss, dipped a little bit, crazy condensed schedule, US Open Cup games, all sorts of stuff going on. So how did you feel like you guys have navigated? What are we in, match day 17 or 18 now? Because you guys already had a bye on the season. So how do you feel like you guys have come out of that? We're almost like halfway through technically the regular season.
Yeah, I think we had no choice but to focus on the guys that were here because we didn't know when he was coming back. And when the season starts, you can't afford to wait because I think gathering up some of those early points is kind of can set the tone for the season. And of course, we went through that bad stretch kind of shortly after that. But I think our games early on were able to provide us some breathing room. And of course, we're looking to go on another unbeaten stretch for sure to try to push up on the table, because we're definitely not where we want to be. But at the same time, we could have been off much worse than we are.
Well, and then you're looking at the performance yourself. How would you rate your season? Because you, every year, since the day you came in, since the day you were drafted, you always wanted that starting role, confident in your abilities, coming from Maryland, a national championship, like getting drafted in 2019, trying to work your way back in, starting lineup, not starting lineup, Tyler Miller goes away. But you always know that there's more work to be done. How would you evaluate now that what are you in your fourth season as a pro? 19, 20, 21, 22, fifth season as a pro. Like how would you evaluate where you're at? And you were on the Canadian men's national team roster at the World Cup. I mean, how would you evaluate where you're at?
Yeah, I think the last kind of 12 months have been a whirlwind. Probably 18, honestly, to be honest, because from not starting last year at the beginning of the season and really thought that I deserved to be to getting an opportunity and making the most of it, to All-Star, to
I was just going to say, I forgot the All-Star thing. I forgot the All-Star, the MVP.
Yeah. And then going into this season, I think obviously it was a short off season for me with the World Cup. So kind of formulating, getting my body and mind right. And I think it's been difficult at times, but at other times I think we've done well. I mean, looking at our clean sheets, we have as many clean sheets this year as we did last season as a whole. So I think that's definitely a positive with the amount of goals we're letting in right now. And of course, we want to continue to keep that low. And I think there's definitely a few that I would always want back, but I think every goalie always has a few as well. But yeah, just looking forward to what the rest of the season has, and this long summer, like I said, it's coming up and it's going to be a busy time. So definitely, I mean, it feels like it's been busy behind us, but it's also busy looking forward as well.
When you look at your back line or the back line in front of you, and we all know the defense starts at the front, right? It's about the pressure from the forwards and the midfield and who's holding it down from a holding midfield position, which has kind of rotated a little bit. Will Trapp is relatively consistent. Sonny Dotson's coming back in after his ACL, but then you've got players like Rosales that's pinched in there. And then, Robin goes down with an injury, but you've got Mickey Tapias and Michael Boxwell, who have been the mainstays in that center back role this season. How do you think that has gone? How has Tapias done stepping in? I know Dabasi is training, but who knows when he'll be available and back, but to have another, left-footed, left center back, whatever that looks like. How has that gone for you with the back four in front of you, which is traditionally what you guys play with?
Yeah, I think with Bakai going down at the end of last year and knowing that his injury was going to carry on to this year, it was going to be important for the team to get a naturally left-footed center back, because I think just in terms of a comfort and confidence level, not only for the player, but for the guys around it and the way that we want to play, utilizing our outside back so much, it can be difficult to play on your off foot. And I think when guys have done it, they've done well, but it's definitely a lot easier when that's the situation. And I think he's come in and done well. And I think this year at the back, we've been a lot more organized and disciplined and not really giving up as much as we have in the past.
Well, and you look at that, and it's not just about being a left-sided, left-footed center back or outside back. I mean, Kamar Lawrence missed the last match. You go back again to a lot of miles and minutes on these guys, and Zarek and DJ were flip-flopping. Devin Padelford comes on. I don't know what is up with the mustache. I don't know if you need to talk to him, if he got that from Diego, or what is going on there. Like, what's the evaluation of that? But it was nice to see a player like that get his MLS Major League debut in his hometown, homegrown. I think I read an article that said he was like working at the concession stands before, and now he's out there playing. I thought he did well in that match. I mean, what did you make of his debut in MLS?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to when he first kind of came in preseason last year, actually, when he didn't even have a contract yet. And I think he kind of worked and showed himself and really earned the contract with how he was doing. Because I think at first he kind of came with the mindset of like, I'm just going to kind of train. Like, he was committed to university.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of been a crazy 12 months, 18 months for him as well. But I think everything that he's done, he's kind of earned, and a lot of guys have kind of taken him under the wing, and he's kind of just soaked up all the information. And I think his debut was definitely deserved, and based on the circumstances in a situation like that, I mean, I think he thought he was going to be traveling with the second team up until a couple of days before the game when Kamar got hurt, unfortunately. But he's definitely earned it. And yeah, the stash, I mean, he actually shaved it off, but I was like,
did he?
Yeah, he did. I was like, you got the biggest shout out from Tom Bogert, and then you go and shave it off. I was like, that's got to be your MO now. Like, you know what I mean? It's like people tell me like you can't cut off your blonde hair. I was like, you had your MO, like you had the stash, like that was gonna be your look. But he's decided to shave it off. But knowing him, he'll probably grow it back again.
You know what, though? I give him some credit that, like, he gets this big shout out and then he's like, no, I'm doing my own thing. You know, like, he's not keeping it because someone else, like, you know, I don't know. I mean, who knows what went behind it? Maybe he has a girlfriend that was like, okay, that's enough of that. You know, I mean, it's tough to say what dictates those things these days, but especially coming on in his debut, he played well. But yeah, so it was fun to see him get those minutes. And I think when you can probably appreciate this, because I know, you know, coming through the draft, like when you have those opportunities, you all you can do is be prepared and take advantage of it, and you know, that be ready. Like, right, that's all you can do. There's not much else you can say. Like, hey, you've been doing this your whole life. Yes, it's next level, but do what you know you're good at it. You're here for a reason, and then just go out and get the job done. And he seems like a likable kid.
No, for sure. I think definitely a great locker room guy, and everyone on the team, I think, was kind of happy for him that he got his opportunity. I think obviously the loan situation is a little difficult with the amount of games that you can be called up for. So I kind of think he got called up one before, and I was like, just kind of be ready, because you might come in. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of got to utilize when they utilize these loans. It's tough because, you know what I mean? It's tough to utilize it and then not play. So I was just like, I know in the back, you normally don't substitute that often, but I was like, you have to prepare for this game like you're going to play, and you deserve it. And when your time comes, I know you're going to be ready, but just trying to help him build the confidence and help him out through the game. And I thought he played well.
Wait, so you're saying the roster mechanisms and the rules for bringing guys up and down from the twos, and how many days they can come up and how long it can happen and stuff, you're saying that's complicated?
Yeah, everything MLS makes their own rules, so of course it's complicated.
I've read it so many times now because of the craziness of the schedule and everybody with US Open Cup and all these, and like, I did Colorado a couple of weeks ago, and they've been like decimated by injuries, and they're trying to figure out who they can call up in these 4-day windows and these stints, but then it can't be this much and it can't be that guy on the roster. I'm like, how are these teams how are they not in violation every month, every week? Because you just can't even keep track, no matter how hard it's, how it's spelled out. Like, I understand there's a method sort of behind the madness, but I can't keep track.
Yeah, I think it's tough for the players to kind of keep up, and I've tried to do my best job of kind of understanding, but I guarantee a lot of the guys in the league, especially probably the internationals, don't understand it at all because they're coming from a free market. So I think
right.
It's definitely very complex, and who knows how long that will last.
Right, exactly. And then sometimes the rules get bent a little bit for certain things, but we'll save that for another podcast. So I want to talk just before we wrap up here, because I know you got places to be and things to do as we're talking about this crazy schedule, is when you look ahead to this summer, we hit on it a little bit, right after Montreal, Concacaf Nations League, Gold Cup, Leagues Cup, you're catching the tail end of that. There's just a lot going on, coming off a World Cup last summer. When you look specifically at Concacaf this year, Nations League and Gold Cup, what's the feeling amongst Canadian soccer, knowing how well you guys did last year? I know the World Cup itself didn't maybe go as exactly as you planned, but getting there, the way you got there, finishing at the top of the Concacaf, what's the outlook for Canadian men's soccer right now and the feeling about it?
Yeah, I think for us internally, it's go win trophies. I think for us, we were at the top of qualifying last year, but there's no trophy for that. And we want to go this summer and win too. And I think we've got a good opportunity to do that. And of course, it's not going to be easy, but our mindset is definitely to go into these tournaments and to reward ourselves with not just playing well, because we felt like we played well and we inspired at the World Cup, but it's about getting results and lifting trophies at the end of the day, because this is why we all play is to win trophies, no matter the competition that we're in. And I think we've laid some groundwork and showed that we can compete, but it's about lifting that hardware at the end of the day, I think, for us.
So then the next hump, that just sort of just randomly led me into the other question. How does Minnesota, I know you can't lift a US Open Cup trophy, but there's still MLS Cup, but how does Minnesota United find a way to get over that hump? Making the playoffs is phenomenal, 4 years in a row, getting to the postseason, but you guys, that's not your aspiration. Your aspiration isn't to make it to the postseason. Your aspiration is to continue to climb, win the Western Conference, get into the final, win that. So what is it going to take for this club that you've now been a part of in your 5th season? What do you see that's going to need to happen to find that and to get over that hump and continue on in the postseason?
Yeah, I think it has to be a mindset shift. I think when I had first come, my rookie year was the year that we hadn't made the playoffs before. So that was, of course, a big thing. But I think now looking at it, we've been in Western Conference finals. We've been in the playoffs the last 4 years. You know what I mean? I think if you ask anyone, would they rather swap out 1 year of making the playoffs versus winning? They'd take that for sure. And I think we can't be content with just making the playoffs anymore. I think it's about, like you said, winning hardware. And I think that's a mentality shift, not only from the players, but I think around the whole club that I think is something that's important, and to really kind of demand the most of ourselves and of each other, to hold ourselves to a higher standard in order to kind of push for those trophies.
I love that, because I think that is true. You can't just demand things of others it's not going to work if they don't see that you're demanding it of yourself. It's that reciprocal nature, and that's the whole point of leadership, whether it's coming from the top or it's coming from the players or it's coming from a guy that's on the bench that never gets a minute. It doesn't always have to be the superstar guy that's playing 90 minutes a game. It can really come from anywhere, that whole mentality. And when you look ahead at Montreal, I just want to hit on it real quick, because that's who you've got coming up. And we just talked about it. They have a Canadian Championship game tonight as we're recording this on Wednesday against Vancouver. So who knows what that squad will look like. Is it challenging to play against an Eastern Conference team that you don't see that often? Or is this just the nature of the beast because of the way the league works, and you just prepping for the next game? You guys focus a little more on what you're doing, less on what they're doing, and just know you got to go there and get the job done.
I mean, I'd love it if we got to play everyone in the league, because I think it's tough to give a trophy at the end when not every team plays against each other. You know what I mean? So I think when you look at the schedules, of course, you can argue, well, this team played easier teams or vice versa when you look at the different conferences. So hopefully we can get back to playing every team, because you want to be able to challenge against every team and to have that as well. But I think for me, being Canadian, I probably pay attention a little bit more to the Eastern Conference teams in Toronto and Montreal, of course, having some national team teammates and things like that on those teams. So I feel like I'm pretty prepared on them. But I think, it could be a mind shift. But I think where we're at in our season, we need to play for 3 points in every game and to go there. And we've done well on the road so far this season, but we can't be content with that, and we need to kind of keep pushing in order to get some points. I think, especially for me, before going into this break, I want to be able to kind of provide the team with the most that I can.
Awesome. Well, I thank you. You got one homework assignment. Next time we chat, maybe you come back with your list of things to grill, what worked, what didn't, some tips and tricks. I feel like, I don't know if social digital guys are at Minnesota United, the folks are listening. Make sure it sounds like a good opportunity to have a grill off or something, some kind of a show, a digital thing there.
Yeah,
in your downtime.
We've had a couple. Yeah, that's the thing too. It's just we've been on the road so much.
Right.
I feel like since I've gotten it, I haven't really been able to use it too much, unfortunately. And then I'm about to be leaving again as well, but hopefully to be able to use it this week, and looking forward to it. I'll definitely try to post it if it turns out good, which I'm hoping it will.
Well, that's okay. People appreciate the flops too, because it's a learning lesson. Everybody knows that it's not going to end up perfect. Don't be one of those Instagram people, Facebook people that only post successes, because that's not real life, right?
No, and I think that's part of the whole cooking thing too. Everyone's like, oh, how did you get good, or what happened? Because I had a couple of the second team guys over the other day, and I made some Caribbean food, and they're like, oh, nice. How did you become good? And I was like, part of it's just trial and error. And you know what I mean? No one, you get two people to cook the same dish, and they're not going to cook it the same way, whether it's method or seasoning or things like that, but just about kind of playing around with it. And I enjoy doing it too. So it's kind of a fun kind of thing I like to do off the field.
I was gonna say it's probably a nice little like stress reliever, relaxing. Everybody's got to have their thing, right? When they're away from the pitch on what they do. You know, you can't just video game all the time. So it's nice to have a different hobby. So, well, thanks, Dayne. I appreciate it. Like I said, I know you guys are insanely busy. I know it's 30 minutes out of your day right after training. Hopefully you guys had a couple of days after that ridiculous stretch, and finally no midweek game for you. So that's helpful. So I appreciate.
I mean, I'm sure we're wishing we had a midweek game in the Open Cup right now. So I mean,
well, of course, but I'm just saying, as far as just like rest for the weary, you know, getting like a couple days, like mentally, emotionally, physically, just kind of get recharged and reset. But yeah, you prefer to be playing last night or tonight in an Open Cup game, I'm sure. But I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And good luck the rest of the summer. I don't know when I got you guys next, but I'll be following along with all the activities between the Canadian national team and Minnesota United. So I appreciate it.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody, tune in next week. We got another Sound of the Loons podcast. Hop it up. I don't know what day we'll do it next week. Maybe Tuesday. Kind of take a look at the schedule. Everybody's got stuff going on, but tune in next week. Hopefully it'll be after a Minnesota United win over Montreal, another 3 points north of the border. Have a great day, everybody.